Very good. Okay. So, first of all, thank you, Jay and Andrew, for inviting me. And I'm so glad that we have fans conference in person again. It's been way too long. And it looks like that the con has had a great turnout. We haven't had a chance to go over there and see what's going on yet, but we're going to do that later this afternoon. So, Miyazaki and the hero's journey. Only a girl can save us now. All right. Joseph Campbell was one of the most well-respected mythology scholars of the 20th century. His work focused mainly on the heroic quest cycle, which he called the monomyth, because of its presence in almost every single culture in the world. Now, some other scholars of myth, such as Wendy Doniger O'Flaherty, whose work was mostly with Indian myth, Indian and Sufi myth, she thought that he unnecessarily privileged the monomyth over other cultural myths to the disadvantage of the field of mythology studies. Still, the hero's journey and the heroic quest cycle remain ubiquitous. You can see the plot in almost every single film, from Star Wars to Mandalorian to Star Trek Adventures to any films that have a lone hero who takes on the world. Campbell had studied the writing of Carl Jung, and he was never really Jung's student, even though many people had thought that they were quite connected, because they approached the idea of the heroic quest cycle in a different way. Robert Siegel, who is a professor of religion who writes extensively on Jung, he points out that the two men had differing perspectives on the aspects of the heroic quest as far as what was important. And he says, quote, Campbell is chiefly concerned with the similarities among myths, which is exactly what he spent his career studying. But Jung was concerned with the differences and the idea of the archetypes and the more internal quest. But Campbell did borrow a lot from Jung in his studies. But both of these people saw the hero as an archetype with a journey that you could map in a predictable way around a circle or a cycle. All the journeys had common elements. Every journey didn't have all of the elements. I found quite a few different renditions of the heroic quest cycle, but they all have the basic same stages: the call, the initiation, the departure, the road of trials, and the return to the world transformed. And the world and the hero were supposed to be transformed. So you have the call to the quest, you enter liminal space, which is the space between the outer world and the inner world, the spiritual world. You face trials, you reach a low point, you get helpers, not necessarily all in that order either, but then you have an apotheosis and you return back into the world that is renewed through the efforts of the hero. Importantly, the hero was always male. Campbell says in Masks of God that this could have been because of the destruction of goddess culture, the replacement of the goddess with the male gods, and the worship of nature as innate, to worshiping this god that was outside of you, that you had to appease in order to achieve what used to be something that was internal to you. So whatever this reason, the woman was erased from the hero's journey, except her role became that of either the prize for the hero at the end of his quest, or you could be the hero's mother. Gee, you got your vicarious quest through your son. And you were also in the hero's journey peripherally because there was generally an encounter with a goddess, right? And the idea of the subsuming of the goddess into the hero. But woman wasn't supposed to go forth and save the world. Not her job. Now, Campbell might have begun to change his mind in his later years. He was teaching at a women's university, but he never wrote about women as heroes at all. Some of his women students, such as Dana Heller in particular, she repudiated his work and wrote her own book. And some other women decided that if there wasn't a heroic quest for women, that they would create the heroine's journey, which is not the same thing as the hero's journey. And so women are completely marginalized still. And if women were a hero, particularly in modern media, you had to pay a steep price for it. Now, and of course, you almost always had to be rescued by a man at the end of your own kick-ass, badass fight. Nope, all of a sudden, whoop, the rug comes out from under you and here comes the man. And your heroic quest is just kind of ignored by virtue of the fact that he has saved you. So there's I have a,
oops,
no, that's it. This is what one of the many heroine's journey cycles that I found. So it's not a quest to save the world. It's an inner quest to heal female trauma. And there's scholars like Maureen Murdoch and Annis Pratt and others that said that this was what you got as a woman if you did a hero's quest. And so you separate from the feminine, you ally with men, your road of trials, yeah, you got that, but then you find the boon of success. And then you awaken to feelings of spirituality and back to your femininity, healing your trauma with your mother and integrating masculine and feminine, and there you are. So perhaps in that way you save yourself, but you are not saving the world. This is a completely internalized journey. Woman, you're still at home. Now, so in fact, there's a woman who's she's a YA author, and her name is Gail Carriger. She goes by Miss, and she offers workshops and materials covering this idea of the heroic quest cycle for women as she maps it out. And it's a really reductive take on the hero's journey, and it diminishes the idea that a woman can be a hero in the sense of Campbell and others. And yet, there's this Japanese animator who has given us hope for the girl hero. Does this woman look like she's having an inner quest? No, she is saving her world. She is brave. She flies a glider. She has a toolbox of assets and strengths that help her to not only save her valley, but to save individual people and to save the boy. So, do you remember where you were when you first saw your first Miyazaki film? Do you remember? Was it a VHS fan sub? Was it a shiny new Disney DVD? Were you actually in a theater? You remember, do you remember, right? The first time you experienced a Hayao Miyazaki movie. My first time, I was a Miyazaki virgin, as we all were once upon a time, was in a grad school classroom. Yeah, I had, watched anime with my kid, Pokemon and stuff like that. And I really wasn't, privy to the larger world of anime, but I took a class called Lit Film and Anime, and our professor showed Mononoke. Wow. Whoa. I was completely gobsmacked. And that's my favorite academic term. Just astonished. Miyazaki's films. And I went and, of course, saw everything else I could at that time, and then immediately decided to change my dissertation topic from cross-dressing in Shakespeare to Miyazaki. Did the world need another Shakespeare scholar? Probably not. But anyway, so his films are just bursting with ideas and color and noise and silence. They're treated as equally important as the dialogue. Sun and shadows are important in setting the mood, in accompanying the dialogue, in enhancing the plot. His agenda, well, he has more than one. Let's say his agendas: pacifism, our troubled relationship with technology, side by side with his just love of flight and all cool little machines. Sorrow at what we're doing to our planet, and the power of love and respect for one another. It resonates in every single one of his films. And moreover, and most importantly for this particular talk, almost every single one of his movies features girls who are heroes. And if the boy is a hero, he cannot be a hero in the traditional masculine way without destroying what he's trying to save. So for this particular presentation, I chose to focus on two of the films because otherwise we'd be here all day. Because there's so many clear instances of the hero's journey with a girl hero in his films. But particularly, I wanted to look at Spirited Away. I even call it Chihiro's Journey because it follows the path of Campbell's heroic quest cycle just about damn near perfectly. And the other one is Princess Mononoke because it features, well, a boy and a girl hero, but Ashitaka is ostensibly the person on a quest, but he cannot act in a traditional masculine way. He has to change his ideas because every time he does act in a traditionally masculine way, he makes things worse for himself. And he actually relies on San to help him complete his quest as well. So these both have heroic quest cycle elements, but they're not always the same. They don't all go through every single step, but they still each make a hero's journey and come back into a world transformed by their actions. So starting with Spirited Away, the first thing you have is the call to quest. Now, has anybody here not seen Spirited Away? Anybody in this room? Oh, for shame. Spoilers. Oh, well, you need to. That is my assignment, teacher voice. You need to. Okay, so she's this whiny 10-year-old, right? They're moving. She's in the back seat of her parents' car. She's literally yanked out of the world she knows. She's going to a new home. But then on a second layer, she's yanked out of the world she knows because her dad starts driving like a demon, and they end up through this weird forest where she sees all these little statues. You don't know if her parents see those. Her dad's pretty focused. And they end up in front of a wall with a hole in it. So she's being called clearly to quest, but she don't want to go.
It doesn't want to go.
Oh, hit. Yeah, you have to hit.
Oh, there we go.
She's not going. She refuses the call to quest. She doesn't want to go. She's going to stay in the car. She doesn't even want to go with her parents. And they finally talk her into it. She has no other choice. If she stays behind, she's all alone in the forest. If she goes, she's with her parents, but she's still in a scary place. So she crosses a threshold and she goes into literally liminal space in the tunnel. Not happy about it. So next, we're going to go through Chihiro. She also ends up having to cross another threshold into the bathhouse, and that's still after she's tried to get away. She wants to go back, but all of a sudden it's night. And of course, her parents have turned into pigs, which is another statement on the state of Japanese civilization at the time. Miyazaki was very much against the greed and materialism. Oh, Porco.
Oh, sorry.
I got to take a picture with you and feel, oh man, awesome. See, okay, digress, because this is what I'll do. Porco is another male hero that cannot act in traditional ways. Hell, he's a pig. You know, he has decided to abandon being a man and a pilot and becomes an animal because he does not like the way he has behaved. So even though he's a hero, he still can't be traditional. And he has to have the help of many women, from the women who built his plane to Theo. So he is another example of the untraditional heroic quest. Thanks. You didn't know your timing was going to be perfect, right? Anyway, so Chihiro has to cross 2 thresholds. And to do that, she has to have help from a guide. Generally on your quest, you will meet a guide, someone who will assist you. You also get other helpers along the way. We'll get to that. But her guide is Haku. He's this young boy that she has seen as she goes through the city while she's looking around, trying to figure out how to get home and get her parents away from the restaurant. But so Haku gives her food from the other realm so that she can stay. But in order to stay, she also has to get a job. So Haku has to help her cross another threshold. And since she's human, that's going to be more difficult for her than usual. And then she has to go get a job. And so in most traditional heroes' journeys, you have the meeting with the goddess. Of course, it's usually the man meeting the anima, his other half, the goddess. But Chihiro, being female, has the potential to be the goddess herself. So her meeting with the goddess is a little bit more unusual. Now, you may think that Yubaba is not necessarily a good example of the goddess, but consider she's powerful. She runs a bathhouse for spirits. She's also clearly fertile. She has a giant baby. So she does, in this way, represent the goddess to Chihiro. But to get a job, Chihiro has to give up her name and she has to go to work doing menial tasks, which puts her on her road of trials. So she becomes a servant in the bathhouse. She does have helpers, but she has to do all kinds of lowly things. But her quest is specific. She knows she has to save her parents. And that's ostensibly her original quest, but she ends up doing a lot more saving than just saving her parents. So she gets helpers along the way, the soot sprites, and the baby who is turned into a cute little mouse, and then Yubaba's familiar also. And she also gets helpers who are a little more able to help her. She gets Kamaji. Kamaji gives her, the instructions to go get a job. He helps her, and then Lynn helps her get acclimated to life in the bathhouse. So next, what every hero has to go through is the belly of the beast. And in this case, she really gets into the belly of the beast because she has to be the one, and Yubaba does this to her deliberately, to clean the stink spirit. And so she trudges up into the bath and helps everybody clean this stink spirit, who turns out to be, surprise, a river god. And from the belly of the beast, she has an apotheosis and comes out with a boon, a magical gift. Every hero's journey does not produce a magical gift, but you're generally going to get helpers and some kind of boon. So Chihiro has a magical gift, but unlike a regular, perhaps masculine hero, she doesn't use this gift for herself. She doesn't even think about using it for herself. She uses it to help save her friends. So she saves No Face, who went a little berserk inside the greedy atmosphere of the bathhouse. She let him in, after all. She really didn't know what she was doing. But most of the other employees, because he was offering them fake gold, right, gave him everything he wanted. And so he ate more and more and more and got greedier. And she tossed a piece of her boon into his mouth and then ran out of the bathhouse. And the farther he got from the bathhouse, the better he was. But she saved him by taking him over to Yubaba's sister, Zeniba, and letting him stay there. So, oh, another hero, Kiki. Hi, Tombo and Kiki. She saves Haku. Haku is basically enslaved to Yubaba. She helps him remember his name. First, she saved him because she gave him some of her boon when he was ill and dying. But she helps him remember who he was. And now he's free. He's a river. Of course, he's cemented over, but at least his spirit is free now. And she saves her parents, who were embarrassingly not worth saving. I mean, but it's her parents, so what's she going to do? And she saves her parents, even though Yubaba still tries to trick her at the end. She knows who her parents are. She saves them, and they return. She crosses her threshold again. She goes back through the other threshold, leaves liminal space, and comes back into the real world, which is still kind of transformed because clearly they've been in there for a while. Things are grown up all around the car. And you kind of wonder what the movers are thinking. Are they still waiting at their house with all their furniture and stuff? Or are they just, have they just given up? And there's two stories about the ending. Some suggest that because she's wearing her little shiny headband, that she remembers. Miyazaki himself says, no, she doesn't yet, but she's probably going to remember her adventures at a later time. But, there's also Disney, who is...
I'm going to defer.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you are. Because go back just a bit. I lost my...
Back.
Yeah. Okay. That have you heard the story about how when Miyazaki actually gave Disney distribution rights for his films, he was very concerned because he had let a Western company do Nausicaa, and they tore it apart and made it Warriors of the Wind, and it was just awful. And so he said, that's it. Nobody's ever going to take my material again. But the people at Disney and Pixar loved him so much that they finally wore him down. And, they said, okay, we're going to give you big stars for your dubs. We're going to give you everything exactly the way you want it, and we're not going to change anything. And there is a true story that he sent a samurai sword to the head of Disney Pixar that said, with a note that said, no cuts. So they got the message. However, because they have to Disneyfy everything, what they did was add stuff. And so, particularly dialogue, because Japanese fans were quite used to silences and the importance of silence in the films. I mean, and so much in Japan is anime, more so than even live action, but you have your silence and it has a place. So what they did in Disney is, because American audiences were uncomfortable with silences, they would add little bits of dialogue or little bits of music so that they felt like they needed to explain what was going on. And at the very end, when her father talks to Chihiro about, how are you going to make it at school? She says, oh, I think I'll do fine. That's not in the Japanese translation. I mean, if you've watched it in dub and sub, it's not there. Also, and speaking of Kiki, in Kiki's Delivery Service, you guys mostly have seen all Miyazaki, or am I going to be spoiling? Okay. So when she gets up in the morning and goes downstairs to go to the bathroom, remember that little scene when she's first at the bakery and she gets up and she has to go downstairs? It's silent. But in the Disney dub, it's little dinky dinky dink 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 music going down the stairs. So, and also in Totoro, when there are silent spaces, when the girls are looking at nature, there's explanatory dialogue, but no cuts. So they added a little bit, but they did not cut it. And of course, as far as dubs go, they are wonderful. I mean, Michael Keaton is Porco. Really great voices for all of the films. Oh, let me see. I lost track of where my notes are. Okay, there we are. Okay, so Ashitaka's journey is a little bit different. First of all, he accepts his call. He does not hesitate. He has killed the boar demon, and it has wounded him. And it is a deep curse. And so he has to leave. He has to leave the Emishi tribe. And his quest is to go find out why this happened, what caused it, and how can he fix it. But he's never going to be able to come back. And he's a prince. So he has to cut his hair. He becomes a regular person again, and he has to leave his community. He also finds out then that he cannot act in a traditional masculine way or show anger, because whenever he does, his curse gets worse. So he has to fulfill his quest, then becomes to see with eyes unclouded, even more than to be healed. So he goes in search. His threshold he crosses is a forest, magical forest. And of course, he gets little guides in the form of the Kodama who take him through where he needs to go. And he has adventures on the way. Of course, he's, saves a man's life and discovers that the emperor is trying to create a war. And when the lovely, decapitation scene that I'm sure all the people who took their children to see this cartoon freaked out over. But whenever he does that, he gets throbbing and his curse spreads. Throbbing in his arm, his curse spreads. So he goes through the forest because he needs to find out what's going on. And he has this lump of iron that he retrieved from the dead boar. And he does not know what it is, because this is historically, this is set in Muromachi period, and it is when guns first began to be used. But he's never seen anything like this before. So he takes that with him. I would hardly call that a boon or a gift, but it's something that he has to take with him to find out on his journey. And he meets Jigo, the lovely and charming monk who's working with the emperor. And he meets the goddess, Moro. What did you do?
Okay,
Yeah, his meeting with the goddess is meeting with San and her mother Moro, who is the wolf goddess. A little bit different from Yubaba, but again, Moro, powerful, fertile, commanding, fearless, and her adopted daughter San, who does not want to be a human. And he goes through his own road of trials. He gets to Iron Town. He meets the people who are creating these guns and bullets. They're made by the lepers in Eboshi's community, where she takes in marginalized women. I mean, she's a difficult character too. I would not call her goddess. She's adversary, and she is a strong, powerful woman, and she wants to have the power of a god to take the head of the forest spirit, but yet she's good to her people. But, oh, let me back a minute. No, that's okay.
I keep doing that.
That's okay. Well, I wanted to show part of Ashitaka's road of trials is that he gets shot. No, not only is he cursed by a boar who got shot, but he gets shot himself trying to take San away from the fortress, because San hates humans. San hates Eboshi. San hates what the humans are doing to the forest. And so she's determined to kill. And Ashitaka has to be the peacemaker, has to be the mediator, but it costs him. So he gets his magical boon when she takes him into the forest, and the forest spirit helps to heal him. That's his belly of the beast. And then his apotheosis comes when he wants to remain neutral, but he can't. And so he takes the side of San and the wolves and becomes involved in a battle. But in the meantime, Eboshi has her way and, of course, kills the god. So saving the world for Ashitaka has to be done with San. They have to give the head of the forest spirit back to its spirit. And in the meantime, she has taken on his curse. And if they don't do this, the entire land is going to be cursed. So, yeah, so they save the world. And the land is transformed. Everything is different. The forest is gone. And yet there is still life there. Everything is green. Everything is fertile. Everything is robust. Moro did not make it, but she did get her vengeance because she took Eboshi's arm. But instead of your basic happy ending with the hero getting the girl, you get San and Ashitaka saying, I really care about you, but I got to do my thing. Yeah, I got to do my thing too.
Oops, sorry. Again.
What? Oh, well, no, not yet. Because a little bit to talk about after that. But so they go their separate ways. I mean, they're still neighbors, and you get the sense that, of course, there's always going to be something there, and maybe they'll get together or not. But Miyazaki was also very good at leaving relationships unresolved, not completely resolved, except for Howl and Sophie. That one was one where, well, Sophie's the hero, but she gets the guy in the end. But generally, the dyads, I call them the dyads because almost always it takes two people to really complete the quest. It takes a girl and a boy, or a young man and a young woman, but they don't necessarily live happily ever after. They'll be friends, they'll see each other, they'll go their separate ways. It's unresolved. He leaves that up to you to decide. So you go to fan fiction and ship them all. And then, and then you feel better about the whole thing. But they both emerge from time in liminal space into a world that is transformed by what they did. They are also transformed by their experiences. Consider Chihiro. At the beginning of the film, you never would have thought, well, because it's a Miyazaki film, but you don't think that this is the kind of brat that, and he said he wrote it for a brat, that is going to be heroic and is going to end up be unselfish and save not only herself, her parents, and her friends. And she comes out of it strong and with self-esteem and happier and confident. So frequently in the heroic quest, your hero will end up with riches, a kingdom, a hot wife, boons, rewards, physical rewards. But in the case of most of Miyazaki's heroes, you don't slay the dragon, you make friends with the dragon. You don't get riches, but you get satisfaction, and you've actually done something worthwhile, and you have literally sometimes saved the world. Like sometimes, for instance, with the younger heroes like Mei in Totoro, she goes to save her mother. And of course, she doesn't know that in that respect, she can't. But at the same time, she's brave, she's adventurous, she follows a quest circle as well. She hears the call to go save mom. She goes through her trials. And, then her reward is right on the campus. But more than that, her mother does eventually come home. But in every single one of his films, you have a heroic quest cycle, mostly with girls. Nausicaa, clearly. Although if you have read the Nausicaa manga, you know that the film is just a tiny little part of the saga. And Nausicaa goes Shiva on everybody pretty much at the end with the God Soldier. So the manga is amazing. He made it really, really complex and complicated because he's him. Just because he's on purpose him. And it's really, anybody read the manga? Couple people, yeah. So it's crammed with images. You can hardly distinguish one thing from another, and all kinds of people, all kinds of characters. And so the film was only done because of the manga. And it's actually not a Ghibli film. It's a pre-Ghibli, but it is considered one of the first Ghibli films because it was done and finished before Takahata and Miyazaki actually created Studio Ghibli. But you have also Ponyo. She's a frightening little heroine. Her quest is to be human, but she's like a toddler with a flamethrower. She doesn't really, in her quest, she goes through all these trials, but she does not know the damage that she's causing as well. But in any of those movies, and now, post Miyazaki, he's doing another film. There probably isn't a post Miyazaki. He's retired. Let's see. He was going to retire after Mononoke. No. He retired after Spirited Away. No. He retired after Wind Rises.
Wind Rises.
His wife kicked him out of the house, said, go back to work. He will never stop working. He will never stop working. But wondering who's doing this now? Who is following in his path? Who is using girls as heroes without diminishing either the girl or the boy or the young man or the young woman? His heroes are girls. They're not androgynous, not really. They are female. The boys are boys. The girls are girls. And he demonstrates that you can be equally heroic out in the world whether you are a girl or a boy. And girls need those kinds of role models. Your alternative is Disney princesses. Although Disney has said that they aren't going to make princess movies anymore, they still need to take a few more steps away from stereotypes because their princess website is a huge billion-dollar business, and all of those traditional stereotype princesses are still quite popular. They tried a little bit with Merida in Brave, and yet when they put her into the princess pantheon, they curved her up and changed her dress. So somebody needs to knock a few heads still there. But in terms of other Japanese animators, there are a few, but it isn't spreading so fast to the West as we would like it to. Hosoda, who ironically has a feud with Miyazaki going about how his girl heroes behave when his girl heroes behave almost exactly the same way. Summer Wars, I would argue, although that takes the whole family. It takes the whole family to be heroic. Seen Summer Wars? And Mirai and Girl Who Leaped Through Time. So he's doing some things to change the stereotype. I'm a little concerned because with all the waifu and isekai happening now, at least in anime series, it seems like a step backwards. But I don't know, maybe there's always a backlash. Belle, okay. Belle is, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm of two minds about Belle. Yes and no. I mean, in some ways, yes, it is. But in some ways, she's very stereotypical in her appearance, particularly. But, oh, Carol and Tuesday, that's a good one. But there's, if you can still count on your two hands, maybe on one hand, the examples of post-Miyazaki girl heroes, I find that a little disturbing. You know, I think, but there are some good series, for instance, but they're not new. I mean, except for Carol and Tuesday, because you've got the third, the girl with the blue eye. She's very brave. She's a warrior and, you know, a dancer. But and some others. I don't know. Lane's
No,
just too, yeah.
she's a hero, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. That's not. Let's just put it over in its own little
But
category.
anyway, okay, so when the hero finishes, well, so I'll just start taking questions in a minute. So let me briefly wrap up. When the hero returns, and I call the girls heroes too, because they are not like heroines. It has a very different feel to it. They are heroes as well. So when the hero comes back and the world is transformed, you get a little period of things being settled, and then it's time for your next quest. So, saying that, let's have some questions if you like. Yes. I think you can use it for both. I mean, clearly you can use it to observe what is already gone on, but I mean, Hollywood is doing it in creating their new stories too. Look at Marvel, you know, they're doing it too. Maybe they're tweaking it a little bit, but I think it is a good tool of observation, particularly if you're applying it to how girls and women are portrayed. Because if you look at that heroic quest cycle and say there's a girl hero, you will almost always find that that quest gets disrupted and she does not get to complete it as a hero. For instance, I'm trying to think of this TV series. Uh, I can see it, I can feel it, I can't remember the name, but anyway, the hero is a cop and she goes back and she gets sent back in time, but she's separated from her kid and she has to basically save the world from the person who sent her back. She has to change history. But when she does end up getting back, she doesn't get to see her kid. So her whole quest is disrupted at the end, like, oh, I'm sorry, you've done all of this for us. And of course, she's in a skin tight cop uniform, because she's future cop. And and that's just one example I can think of, but you will see it if you start looking at and analyzing even cartoon shows, looking at regular Western cartoon shows. If you get a girl hero protagonist, she almost always ends up either dependent on a boy or man or unable to complete the heroic quest cycle. I mean, look at Powerpuff Girls. Bless their little hearts, they don't even have hands. They're created out of Professor X's. They're created from this dude. They don't